The officer who surfed into battle on a landing craft playing bagpipes. There is a photograph, black and white, grainy, the kind of image that looks like it was taken by someone who was busy doing something more important than photography. A man is standing in the bow of a landing craft, upright, fully exposed, the sea behind him, the shore ahead. Other soldiers are crouched low, helmets down, rifles ready, doing what soldiers are supposed to do in a boat heading toward an enemy beach. The man standing up is not doing what soldiers are supposed to do. He is playing the bagpipes. His name is Jack Churchill. The date changes, the beach changes, the enemy changes, but the image is always the same. A man standing when everyone else is crouching, playing music when everyone else is praying, surfing into battle on the bow of a landing craft like it's a wave and he's riding it for the pure joy of the ride. He did it at Vogso. He did it at Salerno. He did it every time he hit a beach. And when the war ended and there were no more beaches to storm, he went to the River Severn and surfed the tidal bore on a homemade board. Because Jack Churchill never stopped riding waves. He just changed the ocean. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. We tell the World War II stories about the men who turned war into something nobody else could recognize. The first time was Norway, December 27th, 1941. Operation Archery. A fjord near the island of Malloy. 6:30 in the morning. HMS Kenya had just finished pounding the island with 450 shells. Smoke from RAF Hampton bombers drifted across the water. The landing craft were racing toward the shore, engines grinding, spray breaking over the gunnels. 105 men crouched in the boat, rifles between their knees, grenades in their pockets, blackened faces, the taste of salt and fear in their mouths. And standing in the bow, facing the enemy, Jack Churchill was playing March of the Cameron Men. The pipes screamed across the water. The drone carrying over the engine noise, over the distant rumble of the bombardment, over the sound of the wind, a sound that had no business existing in a modern naval operation, a sound from another century, a sound that the German garrison on Mayalloy had never heard and could not have prepared for. The ramp dropped. Churchill finished the tune, set down the pipes, threw a grenade, drew his broadsword, went first. The island fell in 10 minutes. The men who followed him off that boat told the story for the rest of their lives. Not the fighting, not the grenades, not the capture of the German garrison. The pipes. The man standing up when everyone else was down. The absolute refusal to behave as though dying was a possibility worth considering. One commando described it years later. When you're in a landing craft heading for an enemy beach, your body wants to make itself as small as possible. You want to curl up, shrink, disappear into the metal floor, and not exist until the ramp drops and you have to run. Every instinct says get down. He paused. And then you look up, and there's a man standing in the bow. Standing, not crouching, not ducking, standing, straight, playing the bagpipes like he's on a stage and the audience is waiting. And you think, if that man can stand, I can stand. If that man isn't afraid, maybe I don't have to be afraid either. He shook his head. That's what the pipes did. They didn't kill Germans. They killed fear. They killed fear. The most important function of any weapon in war. Not killing the enemy. Killing the paralysis in your own men that prevents them from doing what needs to be done. Churchill understood this. Not as theory, as instinct. The same instinct that had led him to carry a sword and a bow into a modern war. The same instinct that told him the unexpected was an advantage, that the abnormal was a weapon, that the way to win was not to do what the enemy expected, but to do what the enemy could not comprehend. The pipes were part of this. A man playing music in combat is a man who is not afraid. A man who is not afraid is a man worth following. And a man worth following is a man who wins, because the men behind him will go where he goes and do what he does and fight beyond their own limits, because the alternative, being less brave than the man with the bagpipes, is unthinkable. The second time was Salerno, September 9th, 1943. Another landing craft, another beach, another dawn assault. Churchill was commanding number 2 Commando now, Lieutenant Colonel, the highest rank he would hold during the war. He led his men ashore at Vietri sul Mare with the same kit he always carried, broadsword on his belt, longbow around his neck, bagpipes under his arm. He played the pipes from the bow of the landing craft, a different tune this time. The men heard it over the engine noise and the distant sound of German guns and the slap of Mediterranean water against the hull. This landing was quieter than Vagso. No naval bombardment preceding them, just the boats and the darkness and the music. The beach was undefended. The resistance came later, inland, in the streets of Vietri, where 5 days of brutal combat would follow. But in the boat, in those last minutes before the ramp dropped, there was the music, and the man standing, and the effect on the soldiers behind him was the same as it had been in Norway. The fear didn't disappear. You can't eliminate fear, but you can overwhelm it. You can replace it with something stronger. Shame, pride, awe, the refusal to be less than the man in front of you. Churchill's pipes overwhelmed the fear with an emotion that has no proper name, a mixture of disbelief and admiration and the wild, irrational certainty that if this man is playing music while heading toward machine guns, then maybe the machine guns aren't as dangerous as they seem. The third time, Brac, Yugoslavia, May 1944. Another island, another landing craft, another dawn. This time, the pipes would be the last sound Churchill made as a free man. He played them on the approach, played them during the landing, played them when the partisans refused to advance and only 7 commandos went forward, played "Will ye no come back again?" as a mortar round killed his men around him. Played until a grenade knocked him unconscious and the Germans took him. 3 beaches, 3 wars within the war. Norway, Italy, Yugoslavia. Each time, the same image. A man standing in the bow of a boat, pipes screaming, sword on his belt, heading toward people who wanted to kill him. Each time, the men behind him followed, because that's what the pipes did. They made following possible. They made courage contagious. They turned a boat full of terrified men into a boat full of men who would rather die than sit while their officer stood. The war ended. Churchill survived Sachsenhausen and walked through the Alps and reached American lines and was free. He tried to get to Burma. The atomic bombs stopped him. If it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years. Then peace. And peace was a problem. What do you do when the thing you were made for no longer exists? When the skill set that defined you, the sword and the bow and the pipes and the absolute immunity to fear, has no application in a world that has stopped fighting? Some men break. Some men drink. Some men sit in armchairs and tell stories about the war until the stories are all they have left. Churchill surfed. In the early 1950s, while serving as an instructor at a land-air warfare school in Australia, Churchill discovered surfing. The ocean, the waves, the board. The same physics that had driven landing craft onto beaches now drove him onto waves. He took to it immediately. The same way he took to everything physical. Total commitment, no hesitation, no half measures. He studied the waves, built boards, practiced until he could ride them. When he returned to England, he brought surfing with him. Not to Bondi Beach or Malibu, to the River Severn. The Severn Bore is a tidal phenomenon, a wave of water that pushes upriver from the Bristol Channel when the tides align. Depending on conditions, the bore can reach 5 feet in height and travel for miles inland. It's not an ocean wave, it's a river wave. A single rolling wall of brown water moving upstream through the English countryside. In 1955, at the age of 49, Jack Churchill became the first person in Britain to surf the Severn Bore. He built his own board, carried it to the riverbank, paddled out into the murky current, and waited for the wave. When it came, he stood up, on a homemade surfboard, on a tidal bore, in a river in Gloucestershire. A 49-year-old retired commando in civilian clothes riding a wave through the English countryside. The image is identical to the one from the landing craft. A man standing when everyone else would be sitting, riding a wave that nobody else thought to ride, doing something that made no sense to anyone except the man doing it. The reporters came, of course. They always came. The same man who'd made headlines for killing a German with an arrow and capturing 42 prisoners with a sword was now making headlines for surfing a river. They asked him why. Churchill gave them the kind of answer that only Churchill could give. The answer that was simultaneously a joke and a philosophy and an absolute statement of personal identity. I saw the wave and thought it looked rather fun. Rather fun. The most British understatement in the history of British understatements, applied to a man who had fought the entire Second World War with medieval weapons and was now riding a tidal bore for entertainment. He continued surfing into his 50s, continued sailing on the Thames, built radio-controlled model warships and sailed them in ponds, threw his briefcase out of the train window every day because walking home from the station without carrying it was more efficient than walking home from the station carrying it. His son Malcolm described him in later years as a peace-loving and unassuming man, quiet at home, gentle with his family, the opposite of what the world expected. The madness, if that was what it was, existed only in the context of adventure. Remove the context, and you found a man who was simply, profoundly, completely himself. A man who did things his way because no other way made sense to him, whether that thing was storming a beach or surfing a river or throwing luggage from a moving train. Jack Churchill died on March 8, 1996. He was 89. The landing craft are rusting in naval yards. The bagpipes are silent. The surfboard is in a shed somewhere in Surrey. The broadsword is behind glass in a museum where tourists photograph it and try to imagine the man who carried it into battle against machine guns. But the image remains. A man standing in the bow of a boat, waves beneath him, music pouring from an instrument that has no place in modern warfare. A shore approaching that is defended by men with guns and mortars and everything the 20th century could produce. And he's standing, playing, riding the wave toward whatever comes next. Landing craft or surfboard, fjord or river, war or peace. The wave was always the same, and Jack Churchill always rode it standing up. If you saw a man standing in the bow of your landing craft playing bagpipes while heading toward an enemy beach, would you follow him? Or would you stay in the boat? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about the men who rode the wave their own way, make sure to subscribe.